a petty, simplistic and vindictive narcissist treating the world like he's always treated people, treating the world like he's always treated businesses, like he's always treated laws, in the hope of what?
Those were just some of the words James O'Brien used to describe Donald Trump. In this video, we'll hear some scathing words from James O'Brien, as well as John Bolton, as they pick apart the man who thought a tanning bed and a Twitter account made him qualified to run a country.
John Bolton writing in the Daily Telegraph today. Bolton, of course, former national security advisor to Donald Trump from 2018 to 2019. He never keeps anyone close for very long, does he? That's an interesting observation. Well, so says he who just made it. He never keeps anybody close for very long. It's not surprising when you think about it, because you get the sense he'd betray his own grandmother for a packet of Maltesers, but he never keeps anybody close for very long. And John Bolton didn't suffer the fate of Mike Pence, the actual vice president, who almost had a sort of death sentence put on his head by Donald Trump during that January the 6th coup attempt. But the fact that nobody stays, even his sort of lawyers ended up turning on him and in jail. It's incredible. Anyway, sorry, I've done it again. You lift up one rock and there's 100 rocks there begging you to lift them up. But John Bolton's written a piece today about the key to understanding him. And in many ways, the key to understanding him involves grasping his enormously oversimplified view of the world. He believes that if he gets on well with someone, then the two countries are getting on well with each other, regardless of whether or not that someone routinely murders dissidents, orders the murder of dissidents, or steals epic fortunes from their own population. If they make the right noises in his company, as Putin and obviously Kim Jong-un have done, then he walks away, according to John Bolton, his former national security advisor, convinced that relations between the two countries, not just the two men, but the two countries, are both harmonious and positive. I think, and I'm always a little bit wary of using the word stupid. I know what you're thinking, but you use it all the time. And you're right, I do. But I'm always a little bit wary of using it, even though I use it all the time. And goodness knows, there aren't many words that fit the most of the highly paid commentators, pundits, presenters and columnists in this country better than stupid. Do I need to do the quick litany out of the things they've told you that would go one way, which everybody honest told you would go the other, whether it's Brexit or Liz Truss's fiscal policy, austerity, Boris Johnson's premiership, or, of course, Donald Trump's second presidency. Do you remember the line? Oh, don't worry about what he says, worry about what he does. John Bolton rightly targets that today, pointing out that he told you exactly what he would do with regard to so-called tariffs. He described it as the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
And this is a key issue with Trump. Many people assume what he says shouldn't be taken seriously, or that he's joking. But the reality is that he's ready to commit to these crazy ideas, which is dangerous, not only for America, but for the global economy.
The experts got it wrong. Businesses got it wrong. Bankers got it wrong. People that backed him got it wrong. The coalition of crackpots is beginning to fall apart. Some of the extremely rich people who thought he'd be brilliant for business have already turned on him. Even Elon Musk has posted, I think, is it Milton Friedman, the economist, for whom tariffs are one of the dirtiest words in the British dictionary. So if Donald Trump considers it to be the English dictionary, I beg your pardon, if Donald Trump considers it to be the best word in the dictionary, the most beautiful word in the dictionary, why is Elon Musk drawing your attention to somebody who considers it to be an absolute disaster zone? As John Bolton points out today, what his tariffs will do to America's economy and the entire economic system leave Ukraine and NATO in the shade. This is his former national security advisor writing, if Trump had acted on April the 1st instead of the 2nd, he could quickly have said it was all an April Fool's Day joke, thereby saving the global economy trillions of dollars. I don't think anyone listening to this program needs it pointing out, but if you're saying something like, oh, why aren't you talking about domestic matters? I hope I don't need to explain to you what the word global means, or what the impact of these policies is already having on this country, this government, this side of the world, this planet, this population. But come on, give your head a wobble. Thereby saving the global economy, writes John Bolton, trillions of dollars of damage when markets started heading south. Here's the point, though. Unfortunately, Trump is totally serious, a fact evident long before Liberation Day. It's sort of petty, simplistic, and vindictive. That's how you understand him. Petty, vindictive, and simplistic. That's not necessarily John Bolton's conclusion, but it is where I have been led. And I'm talking only here about John Bolton in the context of his knowledge of his former boss, okay, his knowledge of Donald Trump. He is not what you would describe as a warm character or a sympathetic character in almost any other context, but he's been there. He has been, to quote Hamilton, in the room where it happens, and therefore he's got more of an insight into some of these matters than most others. The concessions to Russia, if you like, the betrayal of NATO. It's all there. It all fits this petty and vindictive. Petty, I'm going to write this down actually, because I always forget these little phrases when they occur to me. Petty, simplistic, and vindictive.
This is a great summary of Trump. He's a very petty man and treats the world as his playground. It's like he has no idea how his actions can impact the wider world and economy, which is very worrying for the leader of the United States. And in this next section, James O'Brien gets some viewers who have shared their stories about the huge impact this policy has had on their personal finances.
Chris in Brum lost $5,000 off his pension in a single day. He's just been in touch and suggests that anyone moaning about you talking about this needs to give their head away. Nobody is, Chris. Sometimes I like to get in ahead of possible criticism, and that's why I mentioned that nobody listening to this show is likely to be so daft. But there it is, $5,000 in a single day. The estimate of how much longer you might have to work for if your pension takes a permanent hit from this is in years, not months or days. It's in years. If you're relying on a certain level of income in order to be able to be retired, then it's going up in years. And of course, all of these are measurable reactions. You can watch a stock market go off a cliff. You can watch a little rally in the morning. Things are so chaotic. I don't know if you saw this yesterday. A kind of online rumour spread that Donald Trump was minded to suspend some of the tariffs, or that he might press pause or even engage the reverse gear. And the markets rallied remarkably. There was this brief and temporary spike because of an online rumour. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and equally I'm not knowledgeable enough to know how likely it is that might have been engineered by people minded to make a fortune. I don't think you can underestimate how much of what happens in this world is driven by people minded to make a fortune out of fluctuations and events. One British politician was pointing with a maniacal grin on his face at a picture of the pound plummeting in the aftermath of the Brexit vote. No prizes for guessing who that was. And that's the point, isn't it? Is the instability and the confusion is such that nobody knows where to hang their hat. You don't even have, as far as I can tell, the people who predicted the global financial crisis, the sort of lonely voices who were subsequently vindicated. There's an Irish economist, who's a pal of mine called David McWilliam, who was brilliant on this. I mean, it was a reputation-defining moment for a tiny, tiny number of people who saw it on the horizon. In retrospect, it's crystal clear. Everyone can see it. But in the moment, at the time or in advance, nobody can. Otherwise, we would all have changed our behaviours. So you can't really do that either. You can't use that traditional mode of analysis. Gosh, this might actually be a topic. David's in London. He says, tell Chris in Brum he's a lucky so-and-so. I lost the equivalent of 3 years' salary yesterday. I'll be dead now before I can retire. Let's open up that road as well. If not now, then later in the programme. And that question, in fact, there's two, isn't there, here now? It's pretty clearly a double-sided story this morning. There's the political and then there's the personal. And I think we will do both. So you have the political, where, as I've said to you many times, it is almost impossible to make meaningful moments, to make meaningful contributions to the conversation, because I think it is, well, that's what I'm going to ask you in a minute. I think it is that simple, petty, simplistic, vindictive. But on the personal, this is the stuff that we can measure. This is the stuff that we do know about. Millions of people losing money. Some people possibly overnight going from comfortable to uncomfortable. I don't know enough about this world to know how permanent or temporary that might be. But I do know this. Donald Trump seems to be motivated by nothing complicated, by nothing sophisticated. The only parallel I've been able to think of in recent days was with the early days of the coronavirus when Boris Johnson was in charge. You remember him? He was writing about adolescence at the weekend, about 3 weeks after everybody else, with nothing to say about the man that he told you would be fantastic for both the United States of America and for the United Kingdom, Donald Trump. But you remember Boris Johnson. He was Prime Minister of this country, would you believe? I know. It's extraordinary. Imagine waking up from a coma that you went into 6 years ago, finding out that Boris Johnson and Liz Truss had both been Prime Ministers of the United Kingdom. But he was, and he was in charge at the beginning of the coronavirus. And we were watching footage in Italy, particularly, that was almost unbelievable, apocalyptic in its impact and its reality. You know, people almost piling high, bodies, and hospitals utterly unable to cope. And we were watching that, which was in Italy, not in some distant clime. It was in Italy, a country we know well, previously fellow member of the European Union, holiday destination, lots of people with family there. It was in Italy. It was on our doorstep, metaphorically speaking. And we sat here thinking, well, I bet they're really working hard. I bet they're coming up with a plan. I bet they've got... And then they started doing things. And we started thinking, that looks like they're making it up as they go along. Then they started contradicting each other, which is a little bit more forgivable than we realised at the time because the science changed. I think at one point even Anthony Fauci was unconvinced about the efficacy of masks, for example, and then you learn more about the virus and you realise masks are a good idea. But you remember what it was like. And we sat here together most mornings. For a lot of that time, of course, I was in my shed, which was a deeply strange experience. We sat here together most mornings and we really struggled with the idea that they didn't have a clue and that what we were being governed by was Boris Johnson's profoundly flawed personality. And this is the closest I've come to an insight since this whole crazy business started. Stop it. Stop looking for the game of 4D chess, or stop looking for the secret Rosetta Stone or skeleton key that would allow you to unlock the inner workings of Donald Trump's mind, and look instead at what you know. Look at the facts as they are in front of you. What the world is suffering from now is the imposition of a personality that is quite spectacularly petty, simplistic, and vindictive. You can add adjectives to that. Narcissistic, perhaps, would be more appropriate to Donald Trump than it would be to Boris Johnson. But that's it, isn't it? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Are we, in your opinion, are we wasting our time trying to understand what he's doing, when what he's doing is, as Tony reminds us, what the man who told people to drink bleach is doing is simply doing what he has done for his entire life. He's seeking to impose his pettiness, his petty, simplistic and vindictive worldview on the entire world. A petty, simplistic and vindictive narcissist treating the world like he's always treated people, treating the world like he's always treated businesses, like he's always treated laws, in the hope of what?
Tell me what you think in the comments. Is this too harsh, or is it an accurate reflection of Trump and his character? Hit subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one.